Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan, and today we are talking about all the books that I read in January. This is the first of hopefully many wrap-ups here on this channel, but I want to get into that, talk about all the books that I read, where they fit in with the challenges that I'm participating in, which if you haven't watched my first two videos, that's what I'm going to be referencing there. So if you want the context to the challenges that I'm working towards, you could go back and watch those videos if you'd like. And then I'll probably do a little bit of a February hopefuls TBR at the end of the video. But with that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so the first book that I read in January was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. I picked up this book because it is the first book mentioned in Jack Edwards' video where he gives his list of modern books that he thinks could be classics 100 years from now, if that makes sense. So I have like a little side goal of getting through all those books in his video, but this was the first one, so I picked it up from my library. It was the first book I finished. I read most of it while we were home visiting family for the holidays. I can definitely see why he had this on his list. Essentially, you're getting 12 main characters. There's 12 chapters. Each chapter is a different character. And each character is a Black British woman. So it's just 12 different stories, and they're all connected in some way, either directly connected or like indirectly connected, 6 degrees of separation type of thing. For example, the very first character introduced in the book is a lesbian playwright who has a daughter with her gay best friend who agrees to be a sperm donor for her. And then the second chapter is her daughter, and then the third chapter is her like business and artistic partner, like who she started out in the theater business with. So, those 3 characters are very directly related, but then as you go through to the other chapters, you see little, like, someone goes to see one of her plays, or things like that. But this book tries to cover a lot. You have a lot of characters, you have a lot of issues being covered, and the writing style is very unique. I don't know what the name is for this type of writing style, but it's not like traditional prose. There's not like punctuation, grammar, capitalization, quotation marks, things like that. It's like written in a very quick way, which I will admit when I first opened the book, I was pretty put off by that, and I was like, oh, do I actually want to read this? I don't know. But I was able to get into the flow of it very quickly, and I actually think that it worked really well for the book because it made it feel a lot more fast-paced and a lot quicker to get through. And I do feel like I learned a lot through seeing the experiences of all these different characters. As a white American woman, I don't necessarily fully relate to these women who are Black British women. I think what the author does really well is showing how a specific demographic or intersection of identity cannot be boiled down to a stereotype. I think we all have at some level an instinct to look at any demographic that is other than what we belong to and want to reduce it down to like a caricature or a stereotype. And I feel like the author did a really good job of showing like, here is this certain identity, Black British woman, and I'm gonna show you how much diversity there is within this one demographic, and how much of a spectrum there is, how there is so much experience here, especially like when you add in like the realities of like colonialism and things like that. Like there's several characters that are immigrants or children of immigrants. I think that it was really well done and really eye-opening. I also really loved the way that the book showed that no one lives in a bubble. Our influence branches out and touches 100 other lives. Our personal history touches 100 other personal histories across generations. And I think that that is just a really beautiful concept to think about, like how no one is an island, no one is in a bubble. We are all interconnected. Not to be like super kumbaya about it, but I just think that's a really beautiful reminder. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. My biggest gripe with this book is I do not think that we needed the last chapter or the epilogue, which I won't talk about what was included or why I think that, because it would obviously spoil things about the book. But I just don't think it added anything to the story, and I really wish it had been left off. I think with so many characters, it was a little bit hard to connect very deeply with any of them. So, you know, I very much am a character-driven reader. I really like to have really in-depth character like analysis happening in books. So I feel like we were just kind of skimming the surface with each character a little bit. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I definitely see why it was on Jack's list. One of the qualifications that he gave for books on that list was when you finish it, you feel like you could write an essay about it, and I do think that that is true for this book. So I ended up giving Girl, Woman, Other 3.5 stars. It was a really good book. I enjoyed it. It's just not a new favorite or anything, and there were a few things that I feel like could have been better. But I'm glad that I read it and I enjoyed my reading experience. For my biggest reading challenge you'll ever do, it is going to go towards the award winner square because it won the Booker Prize in 2019, and it was the first prize winner to share the award that year. And then I'm also going to put it towards the By the Hundreds challenge, which is for the page count, for 400 to 499 pages. So yeah, that is what this book is going towards for that challenge. Editing Megan here. I just wanted to mention really fast, because I didn't say it in my original recording, but I'm changing the way that I'm doing the rules for the biggest reading challenge you'll ever do. And I just want to mention it because if there's any like rule sticklers like myself, I think it's worth mentioning. I'm changing, I can hear my kids. I'm gonna change from doing like the highlighted square mess. I found it to be a little bit complex when I started trying to put these books in. So I'm gonna do it the way that Sarah at Freshly Read Books does her Herkiad challenge. And I don't know if it's her own rule or if it's an actual original rule of Herkiad, but basically just each book can go into 2 spots and that's it. So 1 book, 2 spots in the challenge and nothing else. So that's what I'm gonna do from here on out, but I will not be changing things around once I place them. So once something gets put on the board, that's where it stays. No shuffling, no reshuffling around in the future to make things work. So that is going to keep the challenge a little bit, but make it a little bit easier on myself trying to figure out where all these books could go. So I hope that makes sense, and sorry this wasn't in the original video. Okay, bye. The next book that I finished in January was Woman Eating by Claire Coda. This book was pretty interesting initially, but sadly it did not go much past that. The premise of this book, our main character, who I don't even remember her name, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter what her name is. What was her name? Lyd? Was it Lydia, maybe? That feels right. I don't know if that's right. But yeah, she's a vampire. She has just put her mother, who is also a vampire, and the only other vampire that she knows. Her father was a human and she never knew him. But the book opens with her. She has just put her mother in like a home for like assisted living facility type of thing. I'm not really sure. And she is going out on her own for the first time, not living with her mom. Everything this book was attempting to do, it just really missed the mark for me. My main gripe with this book is it was just so boring. I was so bored. Like, I love a vampire story, I love a vampire book. Her being a vampire really added nothing to the story at all. I don't mind a book where nothing happens, where there's no like true plot happening, but there has to be something that makes me invested regardless. And I just like, I didn't care about this character at all, this main character. It attempted to have some insights into food and eating and how important that is culturally and socially and things like that, and showing how much she wants to be a part of that and wants to eat and wants that like communal aspect of eating, like around the table with people. Like, she binge watches like mukbangs and see what I eat in a day vlogs like all the time, but can't eat anything herself. And so there's something there with like alienation and like isolation and loneliness, but nothing's really like fleshed out thematically in the book. And all these themes, when they are spoken of, are stated very plainly and also very repetitively. So I felt like I didn't have to do any work as a reader. You know, I just felt like there was no point in me turning my brain on for this book. Maybe I read this book totally wrong, because I had this on my TBR because a YouTuber that I really enjoy had recommended it very highly. And I don't get it. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, as you can tell, I just didn't like this book very much. It was very disappointing. I had very high hopes for it because I love a vampire story, but this was just not the one for me. Not the one for me. I ended up giving this book 1.5 stars. You know, I feel like I was pretty harsh on it, but it was obviously interesting enough for me to finish reading it, so that is something. That counts for something. But this book was my book that I chose to fulfill Ben Reed's Good, his Read Good challenge for 2026. The January prompt was Scranuary, so read a book with a food word in the title, so eating is a food word. For biggest reading challenge you'll ever do, I am putting it towards the spooky creatures prompt under vampire, of course, and then also the A to Z prompt for W. This next book that I'm going to talk about was actually the 4th book that I read this month, but I want to talk about the 2 audiobooks that I listened to together. So I'm going to go over this book first, and then the last physical book that I read, and then talk about audiobooks after that. I hope that makes sense. This was my book club's pick for the month, so that is why I picked this one up. This was sadly just another okay book for me. The premise of this book, you're following our main character's name is Piglet. Well, it's a nickname. Everyone calls her Piglet, Pig, Pink, whatever. She works for a cookbook publishing company. She like edits cookbooks, and she just got engaged to be married to her fiance Kit. And it's set in the UK. She's from like what it seems like she's describing as like a more poor part, and her fiance's family is like very uppity, like posh, like they go to the country club type of vibe. And so she feels like because she's engaged to him, she's got this nice job, they bought a house in a nice part of town, like she's created the life that she wants for herself. But it kind of comes crashing down when her fiance admits to some sort of betrayal. And it's never explicitly stated what this betrayal is. I mean, I have my guesses. But it's like, I don't know, 2 weeks before their wedding when he admits to this, and she kind of spirals a little bit. And I won't say much more than that so as not to spoil the plot. But as far as what I thought about the book, I thought it was just okay. I really wish the book had done more and just taken it further. Like, it was very timid. I really wish that the author had like really leaned into like that female rage, and like that she had like gone off the handle or something. Like, I just wanted her to like scream and throw stuff and do something, and like she just thought about stuff a lot. Like, that was pretty much it. She has a very harsh view of herself. You know, everyone calls her Piglet, which I have my own theory about that, that I won't get into. She kind of goes on like binge eating episodes. She's always speaking very negatively about herself and her body, and assuming that other people are thinking these things about her as well. I appreciated what the author was trying to do with that, but I just really felt like she could have gone way further and done way more with it. I just feel like the book was very timid in what it was trying to say, and we could have really punched it up a little bit, and it would have been a lot better for it, in my opinion. I ended up giving this book 2.5 stars. And for my biggest reading challenge you'll ever do, the prompts that I'm using it for, the A to Z challenge and the Spell Your Name challenge. So for A to Z, it's going towards P for Piglet, and for Spell Your Name, I'm using the author's last name, Hazel, for the H in my middle name. Okay, so this is actually the last book that I read in January, and the only one from this month that I physically own, so I actually have a copy of it, and it is There by Tommy Orange. I bought this book so long ago that I had forgotten everything it was supposed to be about, other than remembering it was centered around this big powwow in Oakland, California, where it's set. But I think the reading experience that I had really benefited from going in somewhat blind about this book. This book has a very intensifying pace. We get a cast of characters at the beginning, like a literal cast of characters. And at first, you're just kind of meandering along, meeting all these new people, trying to keep everyone straight. And then you start to see where the plot is going, and it starts picking up as we get closer to the powwow. And then all of a sudden you get to the climax of the book, and it's absolute chaos, page turning, heart wrenching. Like, the chapters like turn into like 1, 2, 3 page chapters. Like, it's very like quick at the end, and then it's just over. But I loved this book so much. I actually, the next day, went and bought the follow-up. They look so nice together. Like, that's just a beautiful little pair of books right there. The way that Tommy Orange writes about the urban Indian struggle, which is a term that I had not heard before, the urban Indian, but the way he writes about it is done with such love and care and affection. It's really beautiful. I really enjoyed getting such a modern take on the struggle of having a Native American identity in this country, and I genuinely can't imagine what it would be like to be a Native in this country. But I am very happy that there are people like Tommy Orange who are willing to reach out and hold my hand and try to explain what that experience is like. I particularly appreciated the prologue and interlude of this book. It starts out with this prologue where he's like going through, oh man, like stories of like massacres and headhunting and things like that the early settlers of America took part in. And then in the interlude, there was one part that I highlighted specifically. If you were fortunate enough to be born into a family whose ancestors directly benefited from genocide and or slavery, maybe you think the more you don't know, the more innocent you can stay, which is a good incentive to not find out, to not look too deep, to walk carefully around the sleeping tiger. Look no further than your last name. Follow it back, and you might find your line paved with gold or beset with traps. This book has a lot of food for thought without being like overly philosophical or flowery in its language. It is very succinct and to the point about highlighting the atrocities and the massacres and the continued hatred and assimilation and erasure of Native Americans in this country. One of the greatest joys that I have in reading is the ability to expand my worldview, my empathy, my context. That is one of my top priorities with reading beyond just enjoyment. I think that this book did an excellent job of meeting that goal. And it was just beautifully written, a very compelling read, and yeah, one of my new favorite books. Definitely my favorite of this month by a long shot. I ended up giving there 4.5 stars. I highly recommend everyone to read this book. And this was my January pick for TBR Spin for Freshly Read Books, her TBR Spin challenge. And then for the biggest reading challenge you'll ever do, I'm using it towards BIPOC authors that are new to you and for the orange cover on rainbow covers. Really quickly, I want to talk about the 2 audiobooks that I read this month. I don't have a whole lot to say about them, but I will say I've been in a huge audiobook slump since like the end of November. I have not finished an audiobook, which is crazy because last year I was averaging like probably 5 audiobooks a month. And I had started many and just DNF'd them just because I was like, I just don't really care. Anyways, so I picked up the second Murderbot Diaries book, Artificial Condition by Martha Wells, which I'm pretty sure is less than 3 hours, and it took me like a week, I think a full week, to listen to a less than 3 hour book. So I wouldn't say it necessarily got rid of my reading slump, but I did finish it. And it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I listened to the first book on a road trip with my husband last year, and I enjoyed it. And he's now caught up to the series, and we want to watch the show together, so I figured I need to catch up to where he's at. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I did enjoy it more than the first one. I listened to this one on graphic audio, which was fun. I've never listened to a graphic audiobook before, but I really enjoyed the addition of Art as a character. I enjoyed the interactions between Murder Bart. That's their couple name, Murder Bart. I really enjoyed the interactions between Murderbot and Art. I find that part of the book much more compelling than anything to do with any of the humans. I don't care about any of the humans in this book. My main gripe about the book is that it does feel pretty info dumpy, but it is an interesting world and an interesting concept, so I don't mind it too much. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun to listen to. I gave it 3.5 stars. I had fun with it. I'm gonna continue the series eventually. Get caught up to my husband, hopefully. But yeah, that was Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. The second audiobook that I listened to, on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as length goes, was Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. And I do think that this was the book that I needed to get rid of my audiobook reading slump. Just a long, silly, fun audiobook to just, I just had fun listening to it. I don't know. But yeah, I was a Twilight girl back in the day. I read the books as they were coming out, pretty much. Like when I was like 12, 13 years old, I saw the movies as they came out. I went to the midnight releases. I've always loved Twilight. We went to Forks a couple years ago. I never read Midnight Sun. I wasn't really reading at all when it first came out back in, I guess, 2020. So I never got around to it. But then last October, I want to say, I listened to the whole like original saga on audiobook, and I just had an absolute blast, and flew through them and loved reading it. And when I was listening to it then in October, I put Midnight Sun on hold, and it just came through this month. So, which is crazy. I will say Edward is so problematic and whiny and talks way too much. There are some truly wild things in this book, some truly wild reveals about his thought process. I think my favorite thing about the book was getting more like vampire lore, like more of like what are they up to? What are their lives like? How the way that he worked with Alice and her like excuse me, and her like mind reading abilities to solve the James problem was really interesting. So I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. I gave it 3 stars. If it was just based on just brain off how much I enjoyed it, I would probably give it 5 stars, but thinking a little bit critically, holding a critical lens to it, I think 3 stars is a fair rating for me. But yeah, that was Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. All right, really quickly, I want to go through my February TBR hopefuls or whatever. First up, we have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This is my book club's pick for the month, which I'm excited about. One of my favorite booktubers is Newly Nova, and I really trust her recommendations. We seem to have pretty similar tastes, and she claims that this is her all-time favorite romance book, and I think she's even said like if you don't like this book, maybe you just don't like romance. And I don't read genre romance, like contemporary romance, pretty much ever. I've read like 2 Emily Henrys and I enjoyed those, but everything else I've read from the genre I just haven't really cared for that much. So I'm excited to get into this one and see how I feel about it. I have very high hopes. For TBR spin, the spin was read an author that you haven't read from before from your list. So if I can get it off. Wow, those are packed in there. Oh my gosh. I'll be reading An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. Really excited to get to this one finally. But yeah, this is the one I chose for TBR spin. For Ben Reads Good's Read Good Challenge, that's a tongue twister. For the Read Good Challenge, the February prompt is February, which is to read a book by an Australian author. And I actually just bought this book, The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman, because it was suggested as a historical fiction to fit my historical fiction like through the decades prompt on my biggest reading challenge I'll ever do. And then I realized after I bought it that it was written by an Australian author, so I could read this. Also, I was gifted a Book of the Month subscription for Christmas, and for this month one of the options was a backlist book that sounded super interesting to me, that is also written by an Australian author, and it should get delivered tomorrow. So I'm between those books. That one, the Book of the Month book, is called The Natural Way of Things. I don't remember the author's name, but I'll put it on the screen. So I'm between those two for the Read Good Challenge. We'll see which one I gravitate towards in the moment. I'm working on a vlog, Baby Booktuber's first reading vlog. We'll see what I get to for that. I haven't fully decided. I have this library book that I might read for that vlog, Department of Speculation by Jenny Offill. And then I'll probably also be reading or trying to start Northwoods by Daniel Mason. But we'll see. And stay tuned for hopefully a vlog very soon. I have a couple audiobooks queued up and on hold, but I haven't settled on exactly what I want to listen to yet. I'm still a little bit wary of the audiobook situation. Midnight Sun made me more hopeful for my audiobook future, so we'll see about that. I'm not going to push it. I don't want to continue the slump, but I also don't want to force myself to listen to audiobooks. I don't want to force myself to do anything that is a hobby. This is all recreational. So anyways, all right, so that's all I have for you today. All the books that I read in January, a TBR for February. I'm super excited to continue with this channel. I'm filming at night, which I've been trying to only film in the day for like the natural light, but My kids have been refusing to nap. They're in a phase. They sleep really well at night, so this is what we're doing. I would love it if you leave a comment. Tell me, did you read any of the books that I've mentioned today? What did you think of them? What is your favorite book that you read in January? What are you hoping to get to in February? I would love to hear from anyone. But yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And that's all I have for now. So I'll see you again soon. Bye.